Well, hello there. It's Morgan here, and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is for the one who might be feeling a little bit rushed, or maybe feeling very rushed in life. This is something that I personally deal with, and I constantly have to return to this idea of slowing down and not pressuring myself to always keep up with time, even as I hear the clock ticking. So this is just something that I wanted to share with you that I've learned when it comes to looking at a clock on the wall and how I've been kind of playing with that image. So we all know that it is just far too easy to feel rushed in our modern world. And as a poet and artist, I've always been very intrigued by the aesthetics associated with time for this very reason. And I really try to spend a lot of time with it because I want to try to visualize with art or words something different, even if it's only for a moment. So I've already written about a clock on the wall in several poems of mine before, because for one, I just need to be reminded of it myself. And two, it's because this very precise image of a clock, it really does encapsulate that feeling for me of like always needing to keep up with time. So when I sit down to sketch a clock or paint one, I'm always observing where I'm choosing to break the rules. So I've yet to ever paint any kind of hyper realistic clock. So instead, what I often do is, as I am making those circles go round and around and around, sometimes I'll stop and I'll immediately lift up the pencil just to obscure that perfect circle, or I'll add some of the numbers and then I'll blur some of them out. And for me, even just this small activity, it just gives me permission to say, hey, let's change this up for a little bit, even if it's just for a few seconds, even if it's just for an art piece. And if you're listening to this thinking, well, that's great for art, but what about real life? What about things that we do in real life every day? To which I say, those moments where I'm spending, this is like eating a meal. It's like me sitting down, eating a meal isn't going to help me do my taxes, but it is going to give me energy when it's time to do taxes and it's time to do all the stuff that I just don't feel like doing or I don't want to do. It makes a big difference if I was able to get a good meal or get good sleep. Now, I'm not at all saying that this is every artist's creative process. However, I just want to share my own personal reasons for reimagining a clock image, because it gives me permission to say, let's just take a moment to think about, is this a moment where I need to be worried about time? Because absolutely, there are moments where I have to worry about time. But then there are all these other moments where I can choose to say, you know what? That is just not at the top of my list. I don't care how many people ask me about it. I don't care how many people say, well, when are you going to do this? When? I'm focused on where. I'm not focused on when for everything. I'm focused on where I am. And that's just going to have to be what it's going to be. I'm focused on who I am. And when it's just at the bottom of the list. So that is something that I have been able to grow in confidence just by spending time with images and thinking about different ways of looking at something like a clock. And of course, I am certainly not the only artist or poet out there to do that. There are many famous examples. But what I have found is that it matters to keep pushing through, even if it's already been done before, because for me to better understand things that I have to live with every day, I have to learn how to be imaginative about them in my own way. I have to learn how to approach this sandbox of daily images and aesthetics and consider what else might be possible, even if it's just to help me get through the day. And this way of just being present amongst everyday realities is not something that's just for artists and poets. When we look outside and we see the leaves on trees or an occasional butterfly basking in the morning light, those are moments of being reminded that even if it's just for a moment, there is room to explore something more, to engage in moments that remind us that we are free to explore who we are beyond worrying or always thinking about time. Of course, every moment of our lives is not going to be that way. But the little 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds we spend here and there rethinking our relationship to time, it matters. What I hope that you can carry with you when you think about this image of a clock is how you might subvert it in your own way. Even if you haven't picked up a crayon or a color pencil or a marker in 40 years, just think about if you were to sit down right now and you had a whole box of crayons and you were getting ready to color a clock in or make your own clock, what would you do? Would you draw 40 different circles on top of each other? Would you draw half of a circle? Would you write 3, 6, 9, 12? Or would you write all of the numbers? How would you decorate this image of time? And of course, I have to mention the Basquiat quote that I've mentioned a few times in different places where he was quoted saying that art is how we decorate space and music is how we decorate time. And I think that quote applies here too, because it just reminds us that, yeah, time, okay, yeah, it's the clock on the wall. It's the digitized set of numbers before me that rotate through the same set of numbers day after day after day after day. And then at the same time, there's all these other moments where we lose track of time, where we forget about how much time we spent on something, where we just are being present, where we're just listening to a song and we're not looking at it thinking, oh, wow, okay, the song is so good. And all right, it has 10 seconds left, so let me make sure I really enjoy this last 10 seconds of the song. Okay, it has 2 seconds left. And we're just not thinking about that. We're just enjoying the song. We're just letting the song find its resolve while we just listen along. So that's what I see in a clock. And I see it because I keep painting it, sketching it, messing around with it, just playing around with it and saying like, oh, this is something that, of course, there's very serious things associated with time, but how can I create space to be more playful and imaginative about time, even if it's just for a few moments? Of course, there will be times when urgency is necessary and we must hurry up in some way, but quieter, slower moments are calling our name all the same. Thank you so much for listening today. And before we go, I would like to leave you with a question. And that is, if you had a box of 100 crayons in front of you right now, how would you color time? Thank you so much for listening. I'm Morgan Harper Nichols.